bag down. Turn around now.
Officer, I paid. I have the receipt. What's your probable cause?
Counterfeit call. You match the description. Don't argue with me.
I'm Marcus Thorne, DOJ Civil Rights. My credentials are in my jacket. Ask before you grab.
Yeah?
And I'm Santa Claus.
Hands behind your back.
I'm not resisting.
Officer Derek Vance had been patrolling the upscale suburbs of Northern Virginia for 4 years when he decided to turn a routine Tuesday afternoon into a national headline that would cost the county taxpayers $6.4 million. He was 29 years old, fit, aggressive, and operated under the dangerous delusion that his badge granted him the authority to curate who belonged in his sector and who did not. He viewed the world through a lens of suspicion, where every deviation from his perceived norm was a threat to be neutralized. On that bright, crisp afternoon, the threat was Marcus Thorne, a 52-year-old man standing outside the sliding glass doors of Organic Roots Market. Thorne was not a threat. He was not a criminal. He was not indigent. He was the section chief for the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division's Special Litigation Section. He was the man whose signature appeared on federal consent decrees that dismantled corrupt police departments. And he was currently being slammed against the hood of a patrol car for the crime of buying a gallon of whole milk and a block of aged cheddar with a $100 bill. What Officer Vance did in those next 15 minutes, ignoring Thorne's calm demeanor, dismissing his statements, and mocking his claims of federal employment, would become a case study in every police academy in the country. It would be cited in law reviews and referenced in congressional hearings as the definitive proof that bias can blind an officer to reality. Before we dive into the details of this catastrophic failure of judgment, let me ask you, where are you tuning in from today? If you believe that law enforcement officers need higher standards of training and accountability, please hit that subscribe button. We are building a community dedicated to truth and justice, and your support helps us tell these necessary stories. The location was the parking lot of Organic Roots Market in Fairfax County. It is the sort of establishment where the vegetables are misted every 10 minutes and the classical music is piped in at a volume designed to soothe. It attracts a specific clientele: corporate lawyers, lobbyists, retired senators, and the wealthy elite of the D.C. metro area. The parking lot is a sea of luxury SUVs and German sedans. It was 2:15 p.m. on a Tuesday. The sun was high, casting long, sharp shadows across the asphalt. The market wasn't crowded. The lunchtime rush had faded, and the after-work crowd hadn't yet arrived. Marcus Thorne had arrived 10 minutes earlier. He had been in meetings all morning at the Department of Justice headquarters on Pennsylvania Avenue and had taken the afternoon off to prepare for a dinner party he was hosting that evening. He was still wearing his work attire, a bespoke navy blue suit cut from Italian wool, a crisp white shirt with French cuffs, and a silk tie that cost more than Officer Vance's weekly grocery budget. He looked impeccable. He carried himself with the quiet, heavy gravity of a man who has spent 25 years wielding the power of the federal government to enforce the Constitution. He had walked into the store, selected his items, and proceeded to the checkout. He had spoken to no one other than to offer a polite greeting to the clerk. He had done nothing to draw attention to himself other than existing as a black man in a high-end space. But for the clerk behind the counter, and subsequently for Officer Vance, that was enough to trigger a chain of events that would destroy lives. Marcus Thorne was not a man who sought the spotlight. At 52, he had built a career on precision discretion and an unyielding adherence to the rule of law. He had graduated top of his class from Yale Law School, spent 5 years as a federal prosecutor in New York, and then moved to the Civil Rights Division in Washington, D.C. His colleagues described him as a force of nature. He was the architect behind the investigations into 3 major metropolitan police departments that had engaged in systemic discriminatory policing. He knew the Fourth Amendment better than most people knew their own children's names. He knew the specific legal thresholds for reasonable suspicion and probable cause, because he had written the guidelines used to train federal agents on those very concepts. That Tuesday, Thorne was simply a man who needed milk. He stood at the counter, placing the plastic gallon jug and the sharp cheddar on the conveyor belt. The total came to $14.50. Thorne opened his leather wallet, a wallet that contained his Department of Justice credentials, tucked behind his driver's license, and pulled out a crisp $100 bill. He didn't carry small cash often. He had withdrawn the money from the bank that morning for his housekeeper. The clerk was a 25-year-old man named Brady. Brady had worked at Organic Roots for 6 months. He was anxious, eager to be seen as vigilant by his management, and unfortunately deeply prejudiced in ways he likely didn't even admit to himself. When he saw Thorne, a tall, broad-shouldered black man, hand over a large bill, Brady didn't see a successful attorney. He saw a stereotype. Brady held the bill up to the light. He snapped the paper. He used the counterfeit detector pen, marking a yellow line across Franklin's face. The ink remained yellow, indicating the bill was genuine, but Brady wasn't satisfied. In his mind, something was off. "Do you have anything smaller?" Brady asked, his voice tight. "I'm afraid I don't." Thorne replied, his voice a deep, calm baritone. "Is there an issue with the bill?" "It looks new," Brady said, fumbling for a reason to deny the transaction. "We've had a lot of fake bills passing through lately. I just withdrew that from the Chase branch down the street not an hour ago," Thorne said, offering a small, patient smile. "I can assure you it is legal tender." Brady hesitated. He looked at the line of customers forming behind Thorne, mostly white women in yoga pants or business suits, and felt a surge of irrational panic. He decided, based on absolutely no evidence other than his own discomfort, that Thorne was a scammer. "I need to get a manager approval for 100. Brady lied. He stepped away from the register and went into the back office. But he didn't call a manager. He called 911. 911, what is your emergency?" "Yeah, this isn't an emergency, but I'm at Organic Roots Market. There's a guy here trying to pass fake currency." "Has the bill been verified as counterfeit?" the dispatcher asked. "Well, the pen worked, but it looks fake, and the guy is acting suspicious. He's looking around acting nervous. He's huge. I'm actually feeling kind of threatened." "Is he armed? Is he making threats?" "No, but he's just looming. You know, he's refusing to leave until I take the money. Can you send someone?" Brady returned to the register, sweating. "Manager is on the way," he muttered. He processed the transaction, handed Thorne his change and the receipt, hoping the police would arrive before Thorne left. He wanted to be the hero who caught the counterfeiter. Thorne took his bag. "Thank you. Have a pleasant afternoon." He walked toward the exit, unaware that a patrol car was already screaming toward the market, driven by an officer who was looking for a fight. "Do you think store employees should face legal penalties for making false police reports based on bias? Leave your thoughts in the comments below." Officer Derek Vance was 29 years old, and in his own mind, he was the thin blue line separating civilization from chaos. He had joined the force 4 years prior, looking for action. He found traffic stops and paperwork, and he resented it. Vance had a reputation in the precinct, though not the one he thought he had. He believed he was a hard charger, a proactive cop who sniffed out crime before it happened. His sergeant, however, saw a liability. Vance had accumulated 14 complaints in 4 years. That is an average of 1 complaint every 3.5 months. Most of the complaints followed a specific pattern. Vance would spot a minority male in a nice car or a nice neighborhood, find a flimsy pretext to stop them. A rolling stop, a dim license plate light, furrowed brows, and then escalate the situation when the citizen asserted their rights. He had been reprimanded twice for discourteous conduct. He had been sent to a de-escalation seminar that he spent playing games on his phone. But because none of the previous incidents had resulted in physical injury or a lawsuit, he remained on the street. The union protected him, and the department, short-staffed and overwhelmed, kept hoping he would mature. It was a failure of supervision that would cost them dearly. When the call came in about the suspicious male passing fake currency at the Organic Roots Market, Vance was only 2 blocks away. His radio crackled. Unit 4 Alpha responding to the 911 call at Organic Roots. Subject is a black male, tall, dark suit. Complainant alleges counterfeit bills and intimidating behavior. Vance hit his lights and sirens. His heart rate spiked. In his mind, he wasn't going to check on a customer dispute. He was going to apprehend a felon. He pictured a fraudster, maybe part of a ring, someone who would run or fight. He gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. Intimidating behavior, Vance muttered to himself. Not on my watch. He didn't wait for backup. He didn't ask for more details. He didn't consider that the dispatcher had said the pen test passed. He only heard blackmail and intimidating. He created a narrative before he even saw the suspect. This is known as confirmation bias, and in policing it can be lethal. Vance pulled his cruiser up to the curb, blocking the handicap ramp tires, screeching slightly to announce his arrival. He slammed the car into park and exited the vehicle, adjusting his utility belt. He adjusted his body camera, ensuring it was recording, convinced it would capture his heroism. He scanned the exit. The automatic doors slid open. Marcus Thorne stepped out. He was holding a paper grocery bag in one hand and his car keys in the other. He was looking down at his phone, checking an email from the Attorney General's office regarding an upcoming briefing. He looked up as the police cruiser screeched to a halt. Thorne didn't run. He didn't look nervous. He looked annoyed. He paused, waiting to see if the officer was responding to an emergency inside the store. Vance saw the suit and didn't think lawyer. He thought drug money. He saw the calm stance and didn't think innocent. He thought arrogant. Vance marched toward the doors, his hand resting near his holster. He walked with a swagger that he thought projected authority, but actually projected insecurity. "Hey!" Vance shouted, pointing a finger at Thorne. "Stay right there." Thorne stopped. He looked behind him, then back at Vance. "Are you addressing me, officer?" "Yeah, I'm addressing you. Don't play dumb. Put the bag on the ground." Thorne stood his ground. He was 6'2", the same height as Vance, but he held himself with a dignity Vance couldn't replicate. "Officer, I am a customer here. I have purchased my items. Unless you have a specific articulable suspicion that I have committed a crime, I will be proceeding to my vehicle." Vance closed the distance, stepping into Thorne's personal space. "I'll give you the suspicion. We got a call. Fake money. Disorderly conduct. You fit the description. Now drop the bag before I make you drop it." The trap was set. The tragedy had begun. The air between the two men was electric. On one side, the raw, unchecked power of street-level enforcement. On the other, the intellectual and legal power of the federal government. Officer Vance had no idea he was barking orders at a man who could technically order an audit of his entire department's hiring practices. Marcus Thorne took a slow breath. He knew exactly what was happening. He had read thousands of case files describing this exact scenario. He knew that any sudden movement could be interpreted as a threat. He knew that raising his voice would be documented as aggressive behavior. He had to remain ice cold. "Officer," Thorne said, his voice measured and precise. "My name is Marcus Thorne. I paid for these items with legal currency. I have the receipt in this bag. The clerk accepted the payment. The transaction was completed." "I don't care what you say you did," Vance snapped. "I'm investigating a felony. Passing counterfeit bills is a felony. Now, for the last time, put the bag down and turn around." "I am not refusing to cooperate," Thorne said strictly for the benefit of the body camera he knew was recording. "However, I am asserting that you lack probable cause for an arrest. A phone call from a clerk does not constitute probable cause without verification. Have you examined the bill? Have you spoken to the manager?" "I don't need to do that yet. I need to secure the suspect. That's you." Vance reached out and grabbed the grocery bag from Thorne's hand. The paper tore slightly. The milk jug shifted. "That is my property," Thorne said firmly. "You are seizing it without a warrant." "I'm seizing evidence." Vance retorted, throwing the bag onto the hood of his patrol car. "And now I'm detaining you. Turn around." Shoppers were stopping now. A woman loading her trunk 2 cars away paused. A young couple walking into the store stopped and pulled out their phones. The audience was assembling. Thorne did not turn around. "Officer, I am going to reach into my inner suit pocket to produce my identification. I am telling you this so you do not mistake the movement for a weapon." "I didn't tell you to get ID," Vance shouted, his face reddening. "I told you to turn around. You are resisting a lawful order." "I am identifying myself as a federal official," Thorne said, his eyes locking onto Vance's. "I advise you to let me show you my credentials." Vance laughed. It was a sharp, incredulous sound. "Federal official. Yeah, right. And I'm the King of England. I know a fake badge when I hear about one. You guys buy those online to get out of tickets." "Sir," Thorne said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming deadly serious, "I am a section chief for the United States Department of Justice. If you put your hands on me, you will be violating Title 18, Section 242 of the United States Code, deprivation of rights under color of law." Vance froze for a split second. The specific legal citation confused him. Most people just yelled or cursed. This man was citing federal code. But Vance's ego was too far committed to back down. To back down now in front of the people recording with their phones would be a humiliation. He had to be right. The guy had to be a con artist, a smooth talker. "Lawyer talk doesn't work with me," Vance sneered. "You're under arrest." Vance lunged. He grabbed Thorne's left wrist and twisted it behind his back with excessive force. Thorne grimaced in pain as his shoulder joint was torqued, but he did not fight back. He went limp, allowing the officer to manipulate him, ensuring there was zero ambiguity on the video. "I am not resisting," Thorne announced loudly to the witnesses. "I am complying with this officer's physical force. I am being arrested for purchasing milk." "Shut up!" Vance yelled, grabbing the other wrist. "Stop fighting!" "I am not fighting," Thorne replied calmly. The handcuffs clicked shut. The metal bit into Thorne's skin. Vance tightened them as far as they would go, a petty punitive measure used by weak officers to inflict pain without leaving a bruise. "You're done," Vance hissed in Thorne's ear. "You're going to jail for forgery and resisting." Thorne looked at the reflection in the store window. He saw a man in a $3,000 suit handcuffed like a common criminal. He felt the anger rising hot and sharp, but he pushed it down. He needed a clear head. He needed to remember everything. "Officer," Thorne said quietly, "I want you to remember this moment, because you are going to relive it in court depositions for the next 2 years." The spectacle was now in full swing. At least 6 people were recording with smartphones. One brave woman, an older lady with a cane, stepped forward. "Officer, he didn't do anything. We saw him walking out. He was just walking." Vance spun around, sweating now. "Back up. Everyone back up. This is an active crime scene. You want to go to jail for obstruction." "It is not a crime scene," Thorne corrected him from the hood of the car. "It is a grocery store parking lot, and these citizens have a First Amendment right to record public officials in the discharge of their duties." "I told you to shut your mouth." Vance shoved Thorne toward the rear door of the cruiser. He didn't bother to protect Thorne's head as he guided him in. Thorne had to duck quickly to avoid hitting the door frame, another violation of procedure. Vance slammed the door. The sound echoed across the lot. Inside the car, the air was stale and smelled of plastic and old coffee. The partition screen separated Thorne from the front seat, a cage designed to dehumanize. Thorne shifted his weight to alleviate the pressure on his wrists. He closed his eyes for a moment, centering himself. He began to build the file in his mind. Count 1, unlawful detention. Count 2, false arrest. Count 3, excessive force. Count 4, failure to verify exculpatory evidence. Count 5, profane and abusive language. He opened his eyes and looked at the back of Vance's head. Vance got into the driver's seat, adrenaline still coursing through him. He picked up the radio. "Dispatch 1 in custody. Male black. Resisting. Bringing him in for processing." "Copy that, 4 Alpha. Did you recover the counterfeit bills?" Yeah, I have the evidence," Vance lied. He realized he hadn't actually checked the bill. He hadn't even gone inside the store. He had arrested a man based solely on a phone call and an attitude. A seed of doubt planted itself in his stomach, but he crushed it. No, the guy is a scammer. The suit is a prop. The badge he talked about is fake. Vance started the car and peeled out of the lot, driving aggressively. "What is your badge number?" Thorne asked from the back seat. Vance looked in the rearview mirror. "It's on the ticket you're going to get." "I am asking you verbally, as is my right. What is your badge number and your full name?" "Officer Vance. Badge 4922. Happy now." "Thank you, Officer Vance. And who is your immediate supervisor on duty?" "Sergeant Miller. You can cry to him when we get there. He hates scammers, too." Thorne almost smiled. Sergeant Miller. He didn't know the name, but he knew the type. The desk sergeant is usually the gatekeeper. If Miller had any sense, this nightmare would end in the precinct lobby. If he was like Vance, it would go to the holding cell. "I have my wallet in my back pocket," Thorne said. "Inside is my Department of Justice commission. It is a federal ID card with a holographic seal. I also have my badge in a leather case. I am asking you for your own sake to pull over and look at it." "I'm not pulling over," Vance said. "We're going to the station. You can show your little toy badge to the booking officer." "Very well," Thorne said. He stopped talking. There was nothing more to say to Officer Vance. The young man was past the point of rescue. He had driven off a cliff and was currently falling. He just hadn't hit the bottom yet. The drive took 20 minutes. Thorne spent the time memorizing the route, the speed, the times Vance rolled through stop signs. He was compiling the evidence that would strip Vance of his career. Do you believe officers should be required to verify credentials before making an arrest in nonviolent situations? Let us know your opinion. The 42nd Precinct was a brick building that had seen better days. It smelled of floor wax and stale anxiety. Officer Vance pulled into the sally port, the secure garage where arrestees are unloaded. He parked the car and killed the engine. "Out!" Vance barked, opening the rear door. Thorne stepped out, his legs stiff. The handcuffs were cutting off circulation to his thumbs. Vance grabbed his arm and marched him toward the intake door. They walked through the heavy steel doors and into the processing area. There was a long counter behind which sat the desk sergeant. Sergeant Thomas Miller was 55 years old. He had 30 years on the job. He had seen everything. He had seen riots, homicides, births in the back of patrol cars, and he had seen stupid rookies make stupid mistakes. He was drinking a lukewarm coffee and reading a report when Vance walked in with his prisoner. Miller looked up. His eyes scanned Vance, flushed, sweaty, pumped up. Then his eyes moved to the prisoner. He saw the Italian wool suit. He saw the silk tie. He saw the shoes Ferragamos, if Miller wasn't mistaken. But mostly he saw the face. He saw the calm, icy rage in Marcus Thorne's eyes. Miller slowly put down his coffee cup. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. This wasn't a drug dealer. This wasn't a scammer. This was a man who commanded rooms. "What do we have here, Vance?" Miller asked, his voice cautious. "Counterfeiting, Sarge," Vance said, puffing out his chest. "Passing fake hundreds at the organic routes, resisting arrest, disorderly." Miller looked at Thorne. "Counterfeiting in that suit." "It's a prop, Sarge. Part of the con. He tried to tell me he was a federal agent." Vance laughed, expecting Miller to join in. Miller didn't laugh. He came around the desk. He walked up to Thorne. "Sir," Miller said, addressing the prisoner, not the officer. "I apologize for the restraints. Did you say you are federal?" "I am the Section Chief of the Special Litigation Section Civil Rights Division, U.S. Department of Justice," Thorne said. Every word was a hammer blow. My credentials are in my back right pocket. My badge is in the left jacket pocket. Miller stopped breathing for a second. He looked at Vance. Did you verify this? He refused to show me ID until he was cuffed. He was reaching. I told him 3 times. Thorne interrupted. He told me my badge was a toy from the internet. Miller moved behind Thorne. I'm going to reach into your pocket, sir. You have my permission, Sergeant. Miller pulled out the black leather wallet. He opened it. There it was. The heavy cardstock, the gold foil, the holographic seal of the Department of Justice. Marcus Thorne, Section Chief. Miller felt the blood drain from his face. He knew exactly who this man was. He had read the memo about the DOJ's new task force on police accountability. This was the man running it. Miller closed the wallet. He turned to Vance. His expression was terrifyingly calm. Vance. Yeah, Sarge, fake right. Give me your keys. My car keys. The handcuff keys, you moron. Miller roared, the sound echoing off the concrete walls. Get these cuffs off him right now. Vance flinched. Sarge, he's a suspect. He is a high-ranking federal prosecutor and you just arrested him for buying cheese. Unlock him. Vance's hands shook as he fumbled for his key. He approached Thorne, who stood like a statue. Vance unlocked the cuffs. Thorne brought his hands forward, rubbing his wrists. There were deep red indentations where the metal had dug in. Sarge, the clerk said. Vance stammered. Shut up, Miller hissed. Go stand in the corner. Don't speak. Don't move. Miller turned to Thorne. Mr. Thorne, sir, I don't know what to say. We can fix this. Thorne looked at Miller, then at Vance cowering in the corner. Sergeant, Thorne said, I want the watch commander down here immediately. I want the body camera footage from this officer's camera uploaded and locked so it cannot be deleted. And I want to know why this officer is still employed despite the 14 complaints I intend to find in his file. Miller swallowed hard. Yes, sir. Right away, sir. The next 20 minutes in the 42nd Precinct were a study in organizational panic. Captain Reynolds, the precinct commander, arrived from his office upstairs in 3 minutes flat. He was buttoning his shirt, looking like a man marching to his own execution. Thorne had been given a chair, a bottle of water, and an ice pack for his wrists. He sat in the middle of the squad room, effectively holding court. Officer Vance had been stripped of his weapon and badge and was sitting in an interrogation room, effectively under arrest himself, though the paperwork hadn't been started yet. Captain Reynolds approached Thorne. Mr. Thorne, I am Captain Reynolds. On behalf of the department. Thorne held up a hand. Captain, save the apology for the press conference. Right now, we have work to do. Thorne stood up. He was no longer the victim. He was the investigator. Here is what is going to happen. Thorne instructed, his voice filling the room. You are going to call the district attorney. You are going to inform her that you have a false arrest of a DOJ official. Then you are going to call the FBI field office. I want an agent here to document a civil rights violation. Sir, is that necessary? We can handle this internally, Reynolds pleaded. Internally? Thorne raised an eyebrow. Captain, your officer arrested me because I bought milk while black. He refused to look at my ID. He used excessive force. And he did it all based on a call from a clerk who thought a $100 bill looked too new. Your internal process is what created Officer Vance. I am not trusting it to fix him. Thorne walked over to the desk where his belongings had been dumped. He picked up his grocery bag. The milk was warm. The cheese was sweating. I assume the department will reimburse me for these groceries, Thorne asked dryly. Of course, sir. Anything you need. What I need, Thorne said, turning to look at the closed door of the interrogation room where Vance sat, is for that officer to never wear a uniform again. I want his certification revoked. I want him added to the National Decertification Index. Because if he did this to me, a man with the power of the federal government behind him, God help the teenager he stops tomorrow night. The FBI arrived within the hour. Special Agent Miller, no relation to the sergeant, took Thorne's statement. They watched the body camera footage together in the captain's office. The room went silent as they watched Vance screaming at Thorne, grabbing the bag and twisting Thorne's arm. They watched Thorne calmly identify himself. They heard Vance mock the badge. "Jesus," the FBI agent muttered. "He really said, 'I'm the King of England.'" "He did," Thorne said. "That's intent," the agent noted. "He willfully ignored exculpatory evidence to proceed with a harassment arrest." Captain Reynolds put his head in his hands. He knew the department was finished. The lawsuit wasn't just coming. It was already here. Thorne left the precinct 3 hours later. He was driven home in an unmarked car by the captain himself. His car was towed from the grocery store lot to his driveway at the city's expense. When he got home, Thorne didn't go to his dinner party. He canceled it. He sat in his study drinking a glass of scotch, staring at the red marks on his wrists. He wasn't happy. He wasn't triumphant. He was tired. He was exhausted by the knowledge that no amount of education, money, or status could protect him from the basic assumption of criminality that Vance had projected onto him. The video hit the internet 2 days later. A bystander had uploaded it to TikTok, captioning it, "Cop arrests guy in suit for buying milk." It had 4 million views by noon. By the time the news broke that the guy in the suit was a DOJ section chief, the views had climbed to 20 million. The outrage was volcanic. The fallout was swift and brutal, exactly as Thorne had predicted. Officer Derek Vance was fired 6 days after the incident. The union, seeing the body camera footage and the DOJ title, didn't even fight it. He was charged with assault and deprivation of civil rights. He pleaded guilty to a lesser charge to avoid federal prison, but he surrendered his law enforcement certification permanently. At 29, his career in policing was over. He now works in landscaping. Brady, the clerk at Organic Roots, was terminated for violating company policy regarding police calls and discrimination. Organic Roots issued a public apology and donated $500,000 to a legal defense fund for victims of profiling. But the biggest blow was to the county. Thorne filed a civil rights lawsuit not for the money, but to force a consent decree. The settlement was reached in record time, $6.4 million. It was one of the largest individual payouts for a wrongful arrest in the state's history. But the money didn't go to Thorne's bank account. He established a scholarship fund for minority law students and a legal clinic for residents of the county who had been wrongfully stopped by the police. In the final settlement hearing, Thorne stood before the cameras. He looked older than he had that day in the parking lot. "Justice was served in my case," Thorne told the press. "But justice is not a lottery. You shouldn't have to be a federal official to be treated with human dignity at a grocery store. Officer Vance didn't just fail me. He failed the oath he swore. And the system that kept him on the street with 14 complaints failed us all." The story of Marcus Thorne and Officer Vance is a stark reminder of the cost of bias. It cost a city millions. It cost a young man his career. And it cost a community its trust. It reminds us that the badges and uniforms are symbols of authority, but they are worn by flawed human beings. And when those human beings are allowed to operate with unchecked bias, the results are catastrophic. We have to ask ourselves, if Marcus Thorne hadn't been who he was, what would have happened? Would he be sitting in a jail cell right now, unable to make bail, losing his job, his reputation destroyed? The answer, uncomfortably, is almost certainly yes. That is why we share these stories, to shine a light, to demand better. What do you think is the solution to preventing officers like Vance from remaining on the force? Is it better training, stricter oversight, or something else? Please leave your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one, and if you found this story compelling, please like and subscribe. It costs you nothing, but it means the world to us. Until next time, stay safe, know your rights, and look out for one another.